to talk about using formal language in our academic writing. Let me show you an example of an email from a student. This is not exactly an email that I've received, although I've received many like it. It says, "Yo, Prof, how are you? I just joined your course 7 weeks late because I had lots of probs. Like my pet fish got sick and I had to take him to the hospital. OMG, I was so worried about him. I need to know what to do. Can you help me? Thanks. See you later." Now you can probably already see a few problems with this email, but what do you notice? And how would you revise it to improve this email? Just think about it. You could even pause the video and think, what could I fix about this? What seems to be the issue? And here is a revised email from this student, and you'll notice immediately that there have been a lot of changes to it. And this is an example of two types of writing, and you can pause this video if you want to read the revised email, but clearly it has been written in a more formal way because there are different types of writing styles, formal and informal writing styles. The first email that we saw was definitely informal, and the second email was definitely formal. And those are both okay depending on the situation. In formal situations, we want to use a type of writing like I just showed you in the second example. In emails to your instructors or in business correspondence, we want to have a certain tone and style of writing that fits the situation. And we want good, strong, clear sentences, correct spelling, no contractions, things like that. And of course, assignments for your school or university, if you're writing essays or research papers or doing any kind of written work, all of that counts as a formal writing situation, and you need to write carefully. Informal situations include things like, text messages to your friends or emails to your friends, and I think many times social media posts, although we need to be careful about this one, because people do judge you based on your writing and spelling, and there are certain politicians and others that have posted on social media with poor spelling or poor grammar, and people have made fun of them or judged them or laughed at them. And so even in informal, seemingly informal situations, I would encourage you to be careful with your wording and your spelling and writing mechanics. So here are our differences between formal and informal writing styles. First of all, formal writing follows the writing rules that you probably learned when you began learning English. Simple things like spelling and punctuation and complete sentences, those need to be followed all of the time in formal writing. Secondly, we don't use abbreviations or emojis. And we don't use contractions. Like instead of don't, we say do not. Instead of won't, we say will not in formal writing. We don't use slang. And we use that kind of professional tone where it's not like in an informal style where you're writing to a friend or writing to a family member. In a formal situation, you have a bit of a more formal and professional way of writing. And formal language tends to use academic words. Sometimes those words are less common or bigger words, but they're nonetheless important. Informal situations, you might not always follow the rules of writing. You might not capitalize all the time because you're in a hurry or something like that. And of course, informal writing uses lots of abbreviations and emojis and smileys and all of that. Plenty of contractions and slang. And then informal writing, of course, uses everyday words, the words that we use all the time, and that is just fine for those situations. However, we're focusing on your academic life, and in that situation, when you're writing, you need to follow a formal style. So, for example, an example of formal language, in our kind of normal everyday speech, many times we start sentences with so or and that's just fine when we're talking or when we're sending a text message. But in formal academic type writing, like an essay or a research paper, we don't start sentences with so or with and. Instead, we need to use more formal language. So instead of so, you would use therefore. Instead of and, you could use words like furthermore, moreover, in addition, adding that level of formality and professionalism to your writing. And there are lots of informal words that we use, like, for example, a word like stuff. But in formal writing, we're going to use language such as things or items or belongings. The same with an informal word like guy. It's a great word for informal talk, but when we're writing an essay or an assignment, we need to use words like man or young man or person. And the same goes for the ways that we kind of get lazy when we spell words like gonna or wanna. That's not the correct spelling, but we do that many times in our social media posts. Instead, in formal writing, we spell it out the right way. So we say going to or want to. And then also, contractions we don't use in essays or formal writing. Instead, we spell out the contraction. It is. And then words like really or kind of, we replace those with more powerful, stronger words such as essential, in this case, removing these kind of filler words like really or kind of. So I have a few different situations here of informal language, and I want you to just think about how would I make those more formal. And you could even pause the video and write down some answers or think about it. Let's think about the first one here. Dr. King was a cool leader. Well, cool is an informal word, so you could change it to something like influential leader. Secondly, have to say something. Say something, I should say. Well, obviously this is, written and not spelled out correctly. So you need to just spell out the words correctly in that case. Another thing I want to say is, well, formally, all you have to say is next or second or furthermore, using more complex language like that. Corruption is so bad in my country. Well, so bad tends to be informal. So instead, you could say something like prevalent, which means common. Facebook is totally better than Twitter. Well, totally tends to be an informal word in this context, so you might say something like significantly better. Inflation is a really big problem. Once again, you want to use more specific and formal language, such as widespread. Instead of too much, kids watch YouTube too much, you could say something like excessively. And then conversational words such as well, like, well, social media is addictive. Those conversational words we actually don't even need. Just simply say social media is addictive. Be clear and straightforward. They don't believe it won't hurt. Once again, we have contractions here and we simply need to remove those contractions. Another thing about academic writing is we sometimes use filler phrases. I notice students use phrases like I believe or in my opinion or I think. Now, when you're writing an essay or a research paper, it is your point of view on the topic. If it's an essay or a research paper or almost any assignment, it is your point of view. That means the essay is almost entirely your thoughts, your beliefs, and your opinions. Therefore, using filler phrases such as I think or in my opinion or I believe are simply unnecessary and they're distracting. So I run into a lot of sentences that look like this. I believe governments should build more hospitals in rural areas. How do we fix that? Well, we simply remove it. And then you get a wonderfully clear sentence. Governments should build more hospitals in rural areas. Another example here, in my opinion, a foreign language requirement will broaden students' horizons and improve their job prospects. Simply remove those phrases, they're unnecessary, and now you have actually a stronger sentence. A foreign language requirement will broaden students' horizons and improve their job prospects. And it looks so much better. So just to review quickly, what have we learned about using a formal writing style? Well, we've learned to use academic language and a professional tone. We've learned to follow the rules of writing, so spell the words correctly, spell out words, don't abbreviate, use complete sentences, avoid contractions. Instead of won't, we say will not. Don't use emojis or slang or informal words. And also don't use filler phrases like I think or in my opinion. You can just remove those. And that is how you can write more formally and hopefully get high marks on your essays and research papers and other academic work.